Hey everybody, and Tony here with a review of Desde Alla, known in English as From Afar, which I saw a few days ago at the Kino Babylon. This Venezuelan film was released on September 10, 2015 at the Venice Film Festival. It was directed, written, and produced by Lorenzo Vigas. It was co-produced by Guillermo Arriaga, Rodolfo Cova, Michel Franco, Edgar Ramirez, and Gabriel Ripstein. The cinematography was done by Sergio Armstrong. It was edited by Isabela Montero de Castro, and it starred the talents of Alfredo Castro, Luis Silva, Jerico Montilla, Caterina Cardozo, Jorge Luis Bosque, Graemer Acosta, and Aufer Camacho. I went into this film not really expecting anything and kind of went into it blindly. I didn't know what I was going to expect. I never heard about this film until that one fateful day, and I just went into it without any idea of the story whatsoever, nor any idea of its backstory of anything whatsoever. And after I saw this film in its entirety, it was pretty good in its own special way. Starting off with a story, this is a slow-burning drama of two men who are trying to get into grips of not only their sexuality, but their dark pasts and everything that life has to offer them. One is the older man in his 50s, Armando, who is a dentist, and the other one who is a younger street punk in his late teens, early 20s in the form of Elder. You could definitely tell that this story really lives and dies through these two characters, as these are the ones whose journeys are basically the ones that are the centerpiece of the story. Armando has this sort of weird fascination of young men given his age, and him being all single and him not married for quite some time. And Elder is a street punk who is very much someone who lives in the streets and has a gang of his own and doesn't really understand the world outside being part of the street gang until these two souls meet. Yes, at times the pacing of the story is quite slow, and you really have to be patient in order for the story to unravel before your eyes. And even though the story is slow in some paces, it does build itself up in terms of its atmosphere and in terms of just how the characters are feeling with each other and how they're trying to come to grips with how harsh society can be in front of them, especially when it comes to the question of family and all the other problems that society has to offer to them, and also all the opportunities that society has for them. So even though the story does drag on from time to time, and even though it's only 96 minutes, it kind of felt like it went a little bit longer for me. But what I got from the story is that you get to see two men who are trying to come to grips with what life has to offer them, and at the same time trying to overcome their feelings to each other while having this tug of war of emotions really wrapping them around in some will he love me or will he love me not type of situation. The cinematography is quite well done. It makes a great use of long shots and shots that may take some time to get used to as well, but it does present itself to be very atmospheric and really shows a great deal of ambience in order to really get yourself invested into these characters, even though the journey itself can be kind of slow from beginning to end. Now, when it comes to the sounds, the film does make a great use of ambience, atmosphere, tension, and just a lot of moments that will make the characters intertwine with each other in terms of their fates and in terms of their emotional crises with each other and in terms of how they feel for each other. Talking about the characters is basically talking about Armando and Elder, as these two are the main focus of the story. Armando is a man in his 50s who sort of has an obsession with younger men, and he invites them into his house to do certain activities with him, while at the same time has a job as a dentist and happens to be a very well-to-do gentleman. And Elder is kind of the opposite. He lives in very poor conditions. He very much has to clean up a lot of cars and at the same time is involved in a street gang. And you could definitely tell that there is a lot of tension building up with these two men as they are trying to really come to terms with their feelings for each other. And on top of that, having this whole tug of war occurring between the both of them. So you could definitely tell that their story is, as I said before, the centerpiece of what they're going through. And if you've seen the ending, it is both parts sad and at the same time really ambiguous. But at the same time, you really feel pretty invested with these characters given the circumstances they had to face with their pasts. And even though they're not really the most overly developed, you could definitely tell that their journey is kind of interesting. And the acting really does help the likes of Alfredo Castro and Luis Silva really get acquainted with their characters, as their chemistry was pretty plausible. And even though it's kind of weird seeing a much older man have a relationship with a boy in his late teens, early 20s, I still have to say that their chemistry was pretty well done, as you really get to see a lot of the inner turmoils that their characters have. So overall, despite the really slow-paced story, despite the overall lack of music, thus relying on tension, ambience, and atmosphere, despite some of the characters not really being fully developed, and despite some moments in the story which might not always be resolved in such a way that will wrap everything up, I still have to say that Desde Alla is a pretty decent film. And with that said, I give this film a 3.5 out of 5 stars. It's an okay film to watch. If you're a fan of slow-burning dramas, then this might end up being for you. But if you cannot wait for the plot to really speed up, then you might as well search elsewhere. As for me, I think this film was pretty okay in terms of its story and in terms of how it built its characters. Well, that's all for now. Be sure to tune in much later for my review of a Cinema Aperitivo film, which will be shown at the Kino Babylon. So until then, have a great day, everybody.